You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 48, Game Concepts and Group Sizes. Today we talk about game concepts and group sizes. We discuss what game types work well for large and small groups, and some of the challenges that come with each of these sizes. We also rehash some of our old topics by discussing how to handle some situations based on your group size. We also want to wish everyone out there a safe and happy holidays this year. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribing will ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, he's going to crack the code on his prison game someday, Jared.
I did crack the code on that.
Oh, you did?
Oh, yeah. Cracked that B right open.
Figured it out?
Oh, yeah. Honestly, so, do we just want to jump right into that? I guess.
Well, I can ask you how you're doing first. We'll save the prison game in a moment.
We'll save it in a moment. I'm doing great. I got to be home for a week now. Much needed. Much appreciated, you know.
Good old R&R.
I still had to work. I even had to work Thanksgiving Day. But it was like one or two meetings that I had to go to.
So if you're listening to this in late December and you're like, why did we talk about Thanksgiving? Well, we're recording a couple episodes in advance here.
Oh, so. Yeah. Do you want to start over?
No.
Okay. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're talking about our current day in the future. You're listening to it in the future, but it's about the past. Jared's the time episode.
You're freaking me out now. So yes, I'm home next week, back to our nation's capital. But man, I can get around that city now.
By the time you're listening to this, Jared will actually be home from our nation's capital for an extended period of time. Probably being plugged by his brother, which we will have time to talk about.
So we're gonna get my brother on here. I mean, my brother is I'm not so sure about lately. I don't know. He's still gaming a little bit with a small group out in LA. They mostly try to, what's it called? YouTube and like YouTube channel it.
Yeah, we'll let him introduce his YouTube channel when he gets there. He does have something like that. I think you mentioned that before.
So how's your week going?
It's going good. Like we were just talking about Thanksgiving. So this is us recording about Thanksgiving in December now is when you're going to listen to this. But Thanksgiving was great, actually.
Outstanding.
Good food, good times. Smaller than what we've had in the years past. But
yeah.
I think everyone was in the same boat with that. So.
Yeah. So, prison game.
Yeah, so, but before we get to the prison game, you probably want to know what the topic is, and then we'll talk about the prison
game. Yeah, what is the topic?
So, the topic today is game concepts and group sizes. So, obviously not all games fit the group, and Jared always talks about cracking the code, and that's kind of where the prison concept came from.
Yes.
So, this is a game concept, and Jared is a master of game concept and design. So,
I mean, it is truly my passion to sit there and figure something out. I mean, one of the things as storytellers, game masters, masters of ceremonies, dungeon masters, I'm now reading some of the Cthulhu books, so keepers, I think is their term, keepers, and then of course mothers. I just love that term. I can't wait. So I can sit there and just ponder about what I want to do for a game. So right now I'm pretty much we're closing up my game right now. We're in the last night. I think we can all agree to that.
If this goes longer than tonight, we've done something horribly wrong.
So what I'm going to be doing, I've already got my next game actually already sorted out because, essentially that's something we talked about in previous podcasts, how while you're doing maintenance for one game, don't stop development on your next, because it allows you that breathing room during your next game. So you're only doing maintenance on that next game and you're developing game C.
Yeah, staying a game ahead.
Staying a game ahead. I like to I wish I could be 2 games ahead. Like that's my ideal. Like it's my idolized. Like I want to be 2 games ahead, but that's some lofty goals right there.
I feel like your storyteller ADHD would get the best of you though, with 2 games ahead.
It would. But there's something comforting about like having one just like lock, stock, ready to rock.
Which I mean is effectively what you have right now with your next game.
I do. Literally, I've got to type out just some narrative, and I'm done. I mean, like I'm mapping that narrative to the music. That's literally what I'm doing. So there's part of our music episode. Go back, listen to that one about how to time your narratives to the music that you'll be playing for that very epic effect, that very emotional effect. So I mean that takes a little bit of time. So you know it's not easy, especially when I'm traveling. But
so tell me about this prison game.
Oh, so the prison game. The prison game doesn't really match our topic because the prison game, what it was about was how do the main problem that we have is that in a prison game, your characters don't have freedom of movement. They really don't. You're confined to the yard. You're confined to the yada yada, the cell block, and the problem is that how I cracked that code was I looked at the game concept and I was like, okay, how do I alter that to give my characters freedom? So really, all you need to do is focus on a crappy prison. I mean, there are prisons out there that are just awful. Like the guards just don't care. You know, there's where we're from, we have a jail that the guards just don't care. It's Cook County. I mean, it's notorious. One of the worst jails in the United States. So what it was first during daylight hours, the players essentially have a lot of freedom. The guards don't care where you go as long as you're not messing with them. And then at night, it's like, well, what do they do? Because lockdown comes in, after dinner, 8:00, lights out, bars close. So then the guards can sit and play cards. But what I did was I looked into a game called Orpheus. It's produced by White Wolf. Essentially, the premise is that you are a group of paranormal investigators, specifically ghost investigators, who can, through various means, some people, they are capable of becoming ghosts while living. So, like, they go into a meditative trance and become a ghost. And so that allows them to solve problems around the prison without guards being in the way. It allows the supernatural element of terror, and you can really get a solid game out of that. Take that game, use it wherever you want.
If you were always wondered, how could I do a game in a prison?
There you go.
There you go.
They just got to be a little dead.
If you're going into like medieval, going D&D style here,
potions, come on.
Use potions. Use magic teleporters. Do something. You find a crafty wizard who can get you out of that prison at night. You got to be back before the sunrise.
Sci-fi is a little bit harder. Maybe cyberkinesis. Somebody has cyberkinesis. They get an implant where they can hack into the Wi-Fi systems, and you can really create a cool scene with. Because I've thought of this numerous times, on how to do like a really cool hacking thing. Because, really, none of my friends are hackers. I mean, Aaron, you might be able to do some. I don't know.
I do development, similar vein, but not really a hacker myself.
Okay, because like I don't know, like with development skills, are you able to do that kind of stuff? So one of the things is with this. With a cyber-based game, you can take them into the realms of virtual, allow them to act out things, make virtual a setting, especially if you have players. I like to do this because I did have players who knew something about hacking back in the day, and they were like, you didn't press C://. I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I barely know what C:// means. I know it's a command prompt, but either way. But back to actually our real freaking topic.
I mean, there was a topic. It was a game concept that you had.
but we want to compare to game sizes. And fortunately, I've run games with groups as big as 10. I was a assistant storyteller with LARPs, where I think, man, we had like 30 people at one time.
Are there any game concepts that we couldn't do with a large group?
Oh yeah. With large groups, what you want to shy away. I was like, oh yeah, no, there are plenty. And it's like, what couldn't you do with a large group?
I mean, there's things that you can clearly do with a large group that is harder to do with a smaller group. I think with a large group, though, I mean, so like our investigation game, for example, if you had 10 people.
If you had 10 people, it would be really difficult. Investigation game would be really hard. Horror is somewhat difficult with a group of like 10 to 15 people because, trust me, someone's going to fart, someone's going to laugh, and then you got a whole room laughing, and now you got to calm down 15 people. And like, no, I'm trying to scare you guys. Come on, be scared.
Yeah, I always remember with our larger groups, it was raucous and uproaring, and it was hard to do serious.
It really is so difficult to maintain a high emotional game with a group, with the larger groups. It makes that concept very difficult to do because, what's emotional? Because, again, you're looking at the emotional kicks, KYP, know your players. What are my emotional kicks for my players? Now I've got 15 players in a room. That's a lot of different emotional kicks. That's a lot of different storylines that they prefer. For example, you've got, Johnny. Johnny likes the emotional pull of love, which is a very complicated, very difficult concept to create a game on. I mean, like literally, it is one of the ones that I myself wish I was better at, only because it's a challenge I've never overcome. It's a mountain that I keep looking at, and I'm like, I don't know about that mountain there. It looks pretty big, pretty dangerous. I don't feel comfortable yet. But that's the thing about me is I always look to what haven't I done? Mm-hmm. And I want to tackle that. I want to engage in that in some way, shape, or form, whether it's a small part of a larger game, a theme. Really, like, so back to the point, though, Johnny, he wants that love emotional kick. And then you've got Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. We're back to Timmy, Tommy, and Tony.
Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. They're back. They're back with a vengeance.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why I use a random name generator, because me naming things off the top of my head just does not work.
For a long time, all of my NPCs were like Bob, Fred,
John.
Easy 3-4 letter names that just...
They were. I remember that period. Like, I'm a 400-year-old vampire. What's your name? Bob. What?
Why?
Yes, my original name was Robert III. Like, oh, in this modern times, I go by Bob. Okay, there.
I am blending in.
To be perfectly honest, it's funny to kind of, I guess, go off track again. But it was funny that I read one passage in a White Wolf book because essentially, when I get a book, I just rush to the storyteller section, the GM section. I don't look at the rules. I don't. Bam, storyteller section. What can you challenge me to do? What new ideas can you put in my brain? And one of them, it's actually in the, I think it's in the Mage book, and it's just like, don't go with stereotypes. What about the technocracy agent who loves Grateful Dead? And if you know anything about White Wolf and technocracy, they're like
they're like the Men in Black.
They're like the Men in Black. Perfect. They are the Men in Black. They're supposed to be like rather humorless and they are the bad guys of the game. But really, it was like, how about an agent who loves the Grateful Dead? And I do support that. Break the stereotype. But stereotypes are here for a reason. It's because a lot of people fit into those categories. And, unless there's a point to breaking the stereotype, because I was like, okay, I'm going to break the stereotype. And I do remember in one game, I literally when I was crafting NPCs, I was like, how am I going to break this stereotype? How am I going to break this stereotype? And I spent so much development time on it. And then I sat back and, later and was like, why?
Why did I spend all that time breaking stereotypes?
Did it contribute to the theme? Did it contribute to the mood? Was my central message that things are not as they appear? Why did I break away from all the stereotypes? There was no goal. And that's something, man, major lesson right here. Not lesson, major suggestion to all of our experienced and a lesson to the inexperienced. Make sure that everything you do with an NPC has a goal. I make him scary because I want my players to be scared. Why do I want my players to be scared? It's a horror story. That's why I want this NPC to be creepy and scary. I want this person to be joyous because of X, Y, and Z, to break the monotony or whatever. So always with purpose. Always with purpose. Man, that was wildly off track.
That's okay.
I swear you're going to name this like...
This episode was about game concepts and group sizes, and then it turned into Jared's musings about other crap.
Call it the junk drawer, because we all have a junk drawer. It's where you put the scissors, the batteries, a fire detector.
So, I mean, obviously, when you have more players, anything that you're trying to pull an emotional kick for becomes harder. Clearly, with
much harder.
Clearly, with more players, you tend to want to move more towards definitely a group play aspect, not something where they're going to divide and conquer tasks.
Oh, get that group together as much as possible. Like a sandbox game does not work for large groups of players because here's the thing, and we talked about timing in a previous episode. Timmy, Tommy, and Tony. Timmy, you give him 10 minutes, and you give Tommy 10 minutes. And trust me, both of them will think like that was not enough time at all. I've done it. I've tried to give my players only 10 minutes, and they've always been like, more time, please.
It goes fast.
And you have to be like the Supreme Court, like you are out of time. And they give you a red light. That's what they do, actually, in the Supreme Court. One step short of a cane, just pulling people aside. But you got to remember that Tony has been sitting there for 20 minutes doing absolutely nada. Nothing in a sandbox game unless Timmy and Tommy have purposely looped Tony into their plans. You have to keep group cohesion with large groups. You have to be firm with it. When you see those players starting to go astray, like, I'm the Kender, I'm going to go and rob this person. You get 5 minutes, the rest of the group gets 40. Think about it. That player is going to be bored 90% of the night. Do what you need to do to dissuade the Kender. Now, remember, we talked about the illusion of choice, okay, to dissuade that player from going outside the bounds. And that's why large groups, you really do need that cohesive unit. You need to sit down for that gathering session to make sure that somebody's not building that Kender that is not going to match the group of fighters. The group of fighters are going to want to go in through the front door. They're going to want to kick it down. They're going to want to kill the guards and do all the breaking of things. And the Kender is going to want to sneak in through the back window. And the Kender character, or the player who's playing the Kender, is going to want to sneak in through the back window. And he's going to want to go rogue. He's going rogue, right? Get it?
He actually is a rogue.
He is a rogue.
He's going rogue.
He's going rogue. I hope somebody out there laughed at that. Your group, if you give everyone 5 minutes and I've got 10 players, that group has 45 minutes of gameplay while your Kender player has 5. And that's why it's so unimaginably important to try to group up. Now, let's say you have the Kender that does go in the back door. Like, I can't stop it. This one player loves to go in through the back door. Try to get that player, discuss with them, talk with them about incorporating some other players into it. Maybe the wizard wants to go in through the back door too. He does not prefer to be shot at by arrows.
Maybe this is all part of a planning and strategy session that your characters are having. Hopefully, you're rogue.
Yeah.
is communicating with the rest of the players.
And that's the big thing. You got to force them to communicate, because if you're not forcing them to communicate, sometimes they won't. And it trust me, it becomes a cluster. It becomes a huge cluster. And then you got, the Kender player at the end of the night. It's like, dude, I played for a total of 15 minutes. Well, yeah, but our game session was 3 hours. I'm sorry that the group of 8 other players were all engaged in the same scene and got 45 minutes. It just big things like that. You have to take a step back at your development phase and look at the size of your group. It's critical. It is absolutely critical. And think of it in theme, mood, emotional kicks. You have to extrapolate, and you have to develop a game that, remember, although not everyone will be in the direct spotlight at all times, they need to still be in the light. And that's why your gathering is so critical. You got to make sure that you don't have the one rogue in a party full of barbarians.
Yeah, so our friends over at the Dungeon Master Dojo podcast, they're
probably rolling their eyes and like, you rookies,
you got no idea what you're doing. They have quite a large group. They say that at times they've run with 12, 16 people. And in order to accommodate that number of people, they're not all at the same table. They are split with a GM at each table running the same scenario with the groups, which is something that maybe you might want to consider if you have that sort of backup and somebody that you can collaborate with. And that's actually a real collaboration. It's not kind of like the collaborative storytelling that we talked about before, because that's like kind of, we're collaborating, which is we're not stepping on each other's toes. This is, we both know the outcomes of the story. Like, we have worked on it together to make a story.
Yeah, and that's essentially when you just have, when you can call it 3 STs, you can call it an ST and 2 ASTs, assistant storytellers, like we had in LARP, because the group sizes were so big and the needs for rules moderators and story people in LARP, it becomes vital to have ASTs. If you are the storyteller who's a LARP of 40 and you have no ASTs, you need to reevaluate what you're doing. You need
other people to take other people aside and do stuff with them. A lot of times players can typically hash out their own crap between each other. But you need the referee there.
My whole thing is that with a LARP storyteller, because I was one, if you're constantly saying, give me 5 minutes, I have to do with this, finish this scene. If you're constantly doing that all night, you need more staff. You need more storytelling staff. And it doesn't take anything to just get, have someone come on board as, a narrator, because narrators are below ASTs. So there's like a whole hierarchy of storytellers in LARP. It's actually pretty cool, because like I worked my way from a narrator to an AST, and then I was a co-ST for a few months, and then somebody new took over the game, and everyone was like, he's the new ST, and I was like, okay. So apparently I wasn't that great. But then again,
you weren't widely beloved, but
I was not, I guess. But like I said, I was a punk back then. So, but you older and wiser. See, youth is wasted on the young.
But that's when you have this large group. It's just a challenge when you have a large group. So again, you got to pick the right game that's going to fit them. So clearly, adventurers doing the grand adventure is easier with a large group. It fits better with a large group. Okay, you have more people to feel like we are this cohesive unit doing this large thing. In modern nights, a large group, that's like herding cats and dogs. Okay, it is literally like you are Caesar Milan with like 30 dogs that you're walking on leashes, and one goes left, and then or stops to sniff the fire hydrant, and you're like, damn it, Johnny, I need you to be with the group. It's
get him on the back of the neck.
In White Wolf, I mean, I look back at those days, and it's just like, whoa, there was a zoo when we were doing stuff.
Yeah.
And like, a lot of times you typically have to if you want to get people into orderly stuff, you typically have to put them into combat with that, or consider walking around the table and giving them things. Because once you've given them the goal, like, you need to go to the castle on the hill, like, those players go to the castle on the hill. I don't care what they're doing between them, unless you're going to ambush them with goblins or something.
Yeah.
Get them to the castle on the hill. Okay, we're at the front door. All right, start going around the room. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?
And that's what I do, with larger groups, even with smaller groups, left to right, right to left. It doesn't really matter to me. And really what I do with smaller groups is I just kind of wait for you to be naturally closed, and then I move to the next person, and I give them the time to naturally close, and then I move to the next person and natural close. With large groups, you've got to be, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? You should be thinking of your turn while I'm working with player A. Player E should be thinking about what he's doing. If player E is sitting there like, well, I'm going to get another 3 beers in me and some potato chips while player A is engaged in their combat, and they sit down, they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, kind of on you.
That is on you. Okay, well, we'll come back to you. Okay,
we'll come back to you when the circle comes around again.
Yeah.
So large group concepts, you want to focus more on your, again, Aaron had it right. Combat's a very unifying thing. I mean, everyone feels a part of it. It's fast. It's fun. It really does. The grand adventure, D&D is a fantastic system for large groups. Not to say that White Wolf isn't. You just need to really.
You can, but I think I always feel like with a large group, you have to focus more on the crunchy versus the social, because what's going to happen in a large group with social is the hardest to moderate through turn order.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you go back and listen to our topic on the social episode. When you have 10 people and you're trying to social your way through something, if let's say you go talk to the elf in the corner of the bar with 10 people, okay, they think they're going to get beat up, okay.
That is a great point.
Okay.
That is a great point. And because I could just imagine being that elf in the corner and just like a mob of 10 heavily armed people like come up like, good day, sir. Like, you're going to mug me outside, aren't you? Like, you're just sizing me up to see if I have any weapons and how much money I'm carrying. Do you have any coin?
It doesn't work to throw the whole group at it.
No.
And which is the problem. So when you have those large, again, so social problems in a large game and mental problems in a large game are harder to handle because it is typically better handled by a couple people coming to you. Okay? We're going to come and talk with you, and I've got my backup here to kind of give me this. Now, what you can do to make the entire group feel a part of it is you have 2 main talkers, and then everybody else is contributing to the questions by feeding the talkers the questions. Okay? That's a way to do it.
Consigliere.
Yes. Let them metagame.
Let them.
In that situation. It then makes the scene feel more real. And, it's better that way in terms of how it plays out. And everybody kind of, you don't have to suspend disbelief that, 10 heavily armed people come and say, hello, Mr. Elf. And they're like,
oh my God.
I'm gonna be mugged right now. I just wanted to eat my chicken breast.
Please don't murder me and bury me in the garden.
Here's all my money.
If a storyteller wants to do that every time like the whole group goes to talk to somebody, just the person throws money at them and runs the other way.
And in a mental game,
there's 45 copper. Goodbye.
In a mental game, it's a little different. So let's say you're doing, again, when you're investigating things, when you're trying to figure out the mystery, you're looking at the puzzle, you're letting them search the room. That's easier to do with a big group because you can just go from person to person and have them say, what are you looking at? What are you looking at? What are you looking at? What are you doing? What are you doing? Like, that's easy in that concept. But when you try to think about the concept through the lens of a social thing, especially if you do like a vampire game. Okay, Vampire is a heavily social game. It's built on cities and in this wide variety of social gatherings at this place called Elysium, and you're trying to politic your way through the city. If you're doing that with 10 people, it becomes really hard because to break it, when you're doing a social scene, you can't break conversation. It doesn't end well if you have to break in the middle of a conversation. Now, you might stop at a place that you feel like logically makes sense, but Jared's right. With time and the amount of people that you have there, especially if everybody has to engage socially, Oof. I don't know how you make that work in a large game.
Literally, it's got to be like called shots. Like it's almost got to be handled like combat. You know, like you three are going up against Count Dracula. You went Star Wars. I'm sticking with vampire. What the hell was it? Count Dooku? All right, Darth Sidious. Okay, Count Dooku.
Count Dracula.
Yeah, well, at least it's a vampire.
Okay, touche.
You went Star Wars on me.
He's a count.
He is a count. I'll give you that. You could also go on with the Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know.
Count Chocula. What?
Count what?
The
Count. There's so many counts you could pick from. And three of them that you have brought up are vampires. Count Chocula, Dracula, and the Count. All three vampires. Okay? You went with Dooku. But, to end that, this really is going to be the junk drawer episode. Oh my God. But, you know, you got to call targets, and those three have to speak at the same time with the same person. You can't have that fourth person being like, well, I selected NPC B to talk to, but the conversation over at NPC A is really enlightening to me. What you need to do as a storyteller is physically place them in areas where they can't hear each other. And to maneuver into that conversation, you would literally have to physically move. So trust me, and this sounds weird, but one of your best helpers for social scenes, large social scenes, is a battle map. Because then you look at you. You're not standing right next to the conversation. You're talking to James, and you know you hear Dorothy over 3 rooms away. I don't think so.
Even if you draw up a very simple, like just hand drawn map, it's just good to know, like, okay, there's a physical divide between me and this conversation.
You know, and then you can always have the eavesdropper. Like, I'm sitting in the bathroom listening to all 3 conversations. No, you're not. There's a bathroom wall.
Or you could have one of the players who says, they don't feel comfortable doing the social thing and asking the questions, but they want to gauge emotional reactions, see who's making the moves.
There you go, and that's exactly what we're talking about. Spotlight, light.
You give the spotlight to a person, and then they always have actions during everything. Even though they're not asking the questions, they're able to see what's kind of going on.
Never ignore a player, and that's a great point to bring up with large groups. With large groups, you know, you might go, well, this is a social scene, so I'm going to focus on Timmy and Tommy, and because Tony's a barbarian, he's not going to do anything. Ask Tony what he wants to do.
Yes, with large groups, you always have to know your players that don't speak up, and make sure that you always ask them what they want to do. Make sure that they always feel a part to the game, because the other players are going to speak up. Okay? Yeah. They're going to speak up out of turn. They're going to speak up.
They're going to interrupt each other.
Yes, they're going to interrupt each other. They're going to do what they're going to do. But if Tim on the couch doesn't say very much, he just kind of listens to the group. Tim, what are you doing? You got other players bickering, going, no, we got to talk to this guy. No, we got to go see the elf down at the corner of the bar. And they're yelling at each other. Tim, what do you want to do?
And like we said with spotlight moments, if you know there's a large social scene, let's say a ball or whatever, right? Plan something for Tim. Make sure that Tim can, if Tim is, a sniper at heart, make sure there are something to observe, okay? Make sure he can make some perception rolls.
Tim notices that the person brandishes his dagger. Tim notices that the person pulls a gun out from within his breast pocket.
Exactly.
Okay?
Tim can notice a whole bunch of stuff going on. So make sure, because again, you're not going to fill up a room of 70 people unless you're Aaron. Yeah. I'm bringing up that bar where you had like 45 NPCs in one bar.
It had to look real. It had to look real.
No, I'm complimenting you. I'm not detracting. It was freaking amazing. Everyone had a face, a personality, and a job, and the whole 9 yards. It was incredible. I looked back and I was like, oh, how am I going to outdo that? Oh, it started pulling at my collar a little bit. It got a little hot in there.
The only bar in town.
And it was fantastic though. It really gave us an area where we could, instead of knocking on people's doors to investigate, we could literally, we'll go find them, see if they're at the bar. See if they're at the
A
bar,
lot of
because
people did show
everybody
up
was
there,
at the
yeah.
bar. Everybody was. So with large groups, make sure you're tackling and singling out those groups. But I do want to spend some time talking about the smaller.
We should
groups.
talk about the smaller group, yes.
Because that's something I guess we're more intimate with. We know small groups. We've probably been working with a small group, 3 to 4 players.
We've been between two and 3 were our average player groups. Every now and then we'd have a 4th player, but it was always 2 or 3 players. And when you have 2 players, I'm going to tell you, just about every concept works. It's hard to do the epic grand journey with 2 players because it's not as epic and grand when there's just 2 players.
See, I'll disagree with you there. Huckleberry Finn, two main characters, the grand journey. You know what I mean? Really, you can do the grand journey, and I think, to be perfectly honest, it makes it more grand. It's just not the traditional D&D.
Yeah, it's a different thing. You're not getting like the Lord of the Rings grand journey. You're getting
there we go, 2 more people. It was Bilbo and not Bilbo.
Frodo
and then the other guy, Sam.
But you see, but they started as a big group before everybody split up and did their thing.
Yeah, but for like 2 movies they split up. They were together for like 1 movie, Fellowship of the Ring.
They were separated by consequence.
Separated by consequence, but then like everybody broke apart. It was an epic breaking apart. But again, I am talking into the mic now. I will venture everyone to remember, you are not trying to be Tolkien. Tolkien didn't have to deal with players. Tolkien, the characters did exactly what they told.
Tolkien got to put his mind into the characters. Okay, you don't get to do that.
He was the player and the storyteller. He got to do it all. Do not try to mimic Tolkien. It's just it's a trap that I think we talked about not 3 podcasts ago. So really, with small groups, there's very few concepts that don't work out well. Mass combat tends not to work very well. Because your players are used to that intimate, very close, solid combat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if your players aren't built as power gamers in a 2-person, 3-person game, a mass combat is so hard and lethal and dangerous to those players.
It really is. I mean, like, even if you have, level 20 heroes in D&D,
if you're presenting a threat that is so in D&D they use like threat levels and stuff to produce your encounter. If you produce an encounter for a level 20 character, for a level 5 character, for whatever, name your level, and you're always going with, kind of the comparable good threat level, you can end up with some huge encounters. I mean, I'm talking encounters that are scary in terms of like how dangerous they are, because one bad roll in that determines your fate. That like you take a crit and your character
gone. And if you don't have if the other person ain't a cleric or a paladin with some serious healing skills, they dead. So for smaller groups, you always have to remember lethality is such a higher pressure, because there isn't like 59 people or like 10 people, and we've got 1 cleric and 1 paladin who both have healing spells. So with that, it's, you really want to focus on that. Smaller groups, man, I mean,
we're biased towards them.
We're totally biased towards them, but at the same regard, I have such respect for storytellers that do the large groups, because, man, I mean, I've done it. We had eight players at one time. I've done.
We did. We had 10 players. Again, back in those days, though, you were more of go here, do this, it was more directed. Your job as the GM was more directive than let the players do what they want. If you go back to just a couple episodes ago, our player agency.
Yeah.
Okay. The players, we didn't have a lot of agency. I had a lot of fun playing in all those scenarios.
That's the big thing.
That was it was really enjoyable. I don't know if I would have the same level of fun now doing that. I think I'll give you an example. When we did the Scion game with the other group, okay, the other group was a large group. The other group had like 6 people.
Yep.
Plus me.
Yep.
And so
I had a dream about them like 3 nights ago.
Weird.
Oh yeah, like I got into a huge fight with one of them, and he threatened to kill me.
I think I know who you might have gotten a fight with. Actually, I got 2 people you might have gotten.
Well, either way, like he threatened. He was like, "If I see you again, I'm gunning you down." And I was like, "Do it."
But
I bet I'm quicker out of the holster.
I mean, for that group though, they loved that game.
They did, and it was because it was crunchy.
It was crunchy. It was go here and, face the maze of the Minotaur. So if you're not familiar with Scions are demigods to all the pantheons.
They're less than demigods.
Less than demigods to the pantheons, but they all hail to some gods in a pantheon. So Norse, Greek,
Hindu. It's not Hindu.
They had voodoo or the
they had voodoo.
Yeah. So they had all of them. There were a bunch of different pantheons.
It's a cool system. I like this.
Very, very clever in terms of that. Some of the stat stuff, came out where you could do this, and you're way too strong.
Trust me, there's always a part of me who wants to run a Scion God game.
But
I pick up this battleship and hit him with it.
Jared did the Greek Pantheon, and we were doing Jared was doing very Greek themed like missions for us to do as we were trying to stop the oncoming Titans from rising from the earth.
Oh yeah.
And the players loved it. And I remember when we were younger, this is sort of the type of game we did with the groups because it was easy to say, you're going here. You're doing this.
You are going to the Isle of this. You are going to defeat this person.
You're going to the Maze of the Minotaur. And it was like, okay, I guess I am. And I don't have much of a choice. I didn't get to figure out any of that stuff, which is something that I guess I have sort of become spoiled with in playing in 2-3 player games, is that I do get a little bit more choice as to which place we're going to go to first. Jared could have said, we have the Maze of the Minotaur, we have this, we think these are some of the places that they are.
Right, but I was still developing.
Yeah.
Now I've dived so much into the illusion of choice. I mean, back then I think I was still reading the interactive guide. That was one of the books that I read. It was how to develop interactive storylines, specifically for like video games and stuff like that. And essentially I did have like 1, 2, and 3, but I just made a main through line because that group did not like to get cerebral. They liked crunch. They
were a very, very crunchy group.
Oh my God, that's all they wanted to do.
But
and beat on each other.
But it would have been a fun system to play had we played, a different, style of game where we had a little bit more choice or a little bit more spoil for choice in what we got to kind of how we wanted to dictate our direction through the options you have. It's like a good game to give you an example of would be like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. You know where you're going at the end of the game, but you get to choose which direction you're going and how you get there.
Yeah,
you're confined to sets of choices, but you're going to work your way to the end at some point.
Well, and with that game in particular, it was such a large group, and I had to look at the majority of my players. The majority of my players were like, I want to move to the next combat. I mean, they're one of their major concerns was who got the most kills. That was like the bragging point at the end of every night. Well, I remember there was like, guys, you stole my kill. You stole my kill. I'm like, haha. Yeah, like somebody else would laugh at him and be like, I got that kill. It was the crunchiness factor was huge. And it really didn't leave a lot of room for expanding on or exploring different really cool themes like loss.
But you did. I mean, for what it was, you did a decent job with it. I didn't like it, but they loved it. And if you get 6 out of the 7 players to like it, then you know what?
I wanted my 7th. You know me.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear all the tings. I want to hit every target. I don't want to hit just 6 out of 7. I want to hit all. But, with large groups with that, what I didn't know at that time was spotlighting. I didn't have spotlight moments back then. If I was, as advanced as I've gotten now, you would have had a spotlight moment at least once per session. Because everyone else had their spotlight moment anytime they whooped on somebody. That was their spotlight moment. Boom. Because that's all they cared about. Had I been really good, I would have made a spotlight moment for you in particular in every session, where they're still in the light, but you're the spotlight. You're in that direct light. Because they got it every night.
That's true.
They got to rip things arms off and do all that stuff. All the crunchiness.
But I know we've kind of been back and forth here, but do you have anything else you want to bring up about game sizes and concepts?
One of the things that I am now looking at, it's interesting. I guess I just want to kind of bring this to most people's attention. This group called Free Liga. They've put out games recently. For example, dang it, Tales from the Loop, which is now an Amazon series, based off of an artist. When you're looking at games like that, I've noticed a turn in some of the games that are coming out. The crunchiness is starting to go away for more of the moral, ethical considerations. It's really kind of cool. Smaller groups are probably better for those kind of game systems where you're looking at more of the moral, ethical choices. I do like those smaller groups. You can bring it to larger groups, but it's like trying to get a committee together, 10 people to make one decision. It's hard. If any of you have ever been in business meetings, it's really freaking hard. Even when we all agree on that, what's the goal? Profit. What's the goal? Money. Getting 10 people to agree on one thing is really difficult. But when you have those smaller groups, they can lead to really cool conversations about morals and ethics, and really dive into some really deep character development. And I think that's going to be my challenge for this episode is if you've got that large group, try to see if you can get that deep development in each one of your players. Really look at what can you do to design a story to make sure that everyone's got their spotlight moments, and make sure and see if you can up your ante. If you find yourself like I've got a group of 10 people, crunchiness is what they're about. See if you can up your players' level, and get them to push a little further into something they're not used to, a concept they're not used to. A challenge.
Well, Jared threw out the challenge. The gauntlet is laid down. You can let us know how that goes. So, if you want to tell us how that goes for your table, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can contact us on facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. Also, share this with your players, share it with your friends, other gaming groups, other gaming store people. If you've got some people who like the hobby and aren't listening, we would love to have them listen and get some tips and share their experiences with us as well. And also let us know how your game concepts and group sizes go and types of games maybe you run. We'd be happy to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
But that's going to wrap it up for us. So we hope you enjoyed the episode. And for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, guys.
Have a great week, everyone.